And now let us look at the page background. We were talking about images just before, but what can we do with the change with the page background? So let's look at that. And I'm going to do something very basic now. I'm just going to go to Image, and I have a whole bunch of backgrounds uploaded here, but I'm going to take the opportunity right now to tell you a little bit about organizing your media files. I already made separate folders for all the images that I had uploaded before, and now I'm going to show you how to do that and just add all of these in there as well. So you just click on here, create new folder, and then just give it a name, and then you just basically select everything with Shift and you just drag it in there, and then you have everything nicely organized. So I'm going to take one of these. Let's see, I'm going to take this one right here, and I'm going to put it on the page background. And because we have no color and nothing anywhere on this page, neither on the header or the footer or anywhere, we see this image spread all across this background, and it's really nice. But let's see what else we can do here. So if I go to Design, now on the particular preset that I'm on says no color, but I can actually change that, and I can add a central a color to the center, or in fact I can even add color to the sides as well. But let's just look at this now. So let me decrease the opacity here to this, and if we preview this, now in the center here we have this extra white area, which happened because I'm just going to repeat this. I just clicked on this little brush here, and I went from the no color to the color preset, and then I just went to Customize Design, and I have the background right here, and I can increase or decrease the opacity, and also of course I can also give it a color. So let's, for example, try this very light pink here and make this even lighter, because we don't want our backgrounds to be too obvious. We don't want them to be too glaring. And now I have the value of 23% here. I'm actually going to make that 25, round it off to a number that I can remember, because I'm going to need that in a minute right now, and I'm going to show you what's going to happen with the header and the footer. Okay, now if we come to the header, we can do the same thing. We can change the design. Now there are certain settings with the header that we can also use. The one that I have enabled right now is that it scrolls with the site, but it could also freeze and fade out or disappear. But we'll just stick with scrolls with the site right now, because these will need special designs, and we're just doing something very basic here. So then I'm going to go to Design. Again, I have I'm on the one that actually I'm not on the one that says no color. I actually have a color here. However, what I have is that both the background, the entire background, and also the center background are actually set at 0. So if I get this pink that I got for the bottom, and then I bring this down to 25%, then I will have the same thing happening up here, and then with the footer it will be the same thing. Again, you can freeze the footer so that it always stays visible, but I'm not going to do that right now, because that again is a special design strategy. But I'm going to do the same thing again. I think I have the same thing that I have on the header on the footer as well. So everything is 0. Now I'm going to make this 25, and I'm going to go to that pink, and now what I have is, if I take a preview, I have one big site. The header, the footer, the page, everything is the same background. But let's now do something else in order to differentiate. So instead of the pink, how about if I make the header background pale green, and then also go to the footer and make that one, let's see, how about if I make that like a very slight, well, maybe a blue. Let's try a blue, green, pink, blue, why not? So now let's give this a preview, and now we have the different color on the footer, we have the different color on the header, and then we have the central color, the pink, on the page itself. What I'm going to do now is actually I'm going to get rid of the pink and the green and the blue, but for now I'm just going to just reduce all of that stuff to 0, and then it'll be gone, and then if need be we can bring it back. And incidentally, I also brought the footer up a little bit so that we can see everything together. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try out some different backgrounds. So we had this one here. Now let's take a look at this one here. So this is something quite dramatic. It's got this strong black and white thing, and if we were to put any text on this or any images, then we would definitely need to have a kind of like an overlay behind it. But what I want to do now is I actually want to look at something else, and I'm going to go to the header, and I'm going to go to design, customize design, and I'm going to go to one of the other presets that they have here, and namely the one that has a shadow, because you can do some very nice things with the shadow. So it's coming from the top. I'm increasing the distance right now, so it's becoming visible, as you can see, but I'm also going to increase the blur because I don't want this to be very obvious. And let's see, the opacity can stay the same, the distance can get a little bit more, and the blur can get a little bit more. So now I have, and if I preview this, I now have a nice kind of separation between the header and the actual page, which goes across the image, and which would then look very nice when you put a menu on it or a logo type on it or something like that. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the footer. Again, I'm going to go to customize design, but then go to let's see, it's this one right here. So again, I'm going to go to the thing, increase the distance, increase the blur, and but what I think I need to do actually is I think I need to bring this up down like this at 180 degrees so that it actually comes up. So the distance is 11 pixels. The blur, I'm going to be increasing the blur quite a bit. And now let's take another look at this. So now we have a separate area for the footer, we have a separate area for the header, and then the page is somewhere here in the middle. Now what we can do is, let me go to the page and go to customize design. Now I'm going to make the background here white, because this has to be quite subtle now because we have a lot of other effects, and I'm going to bring this down to almost like 15% or something like that, just so that anything that I put on it can become more easily visible. So let's now give it another preview and look at how it looks. And then I can also do the same thing on the header. So I have the center background, I can increase that, but I can also change the color of that maybe, and that's I think what I'm going to do. So I'm going to bring this up to 15, but then I'm going to change the color to a darker color, even like a black. And then do the same thing on the footer. Just go to the center, change it to black, and bring it up to about 15%. And now let's give it a preview. So now we have a website which is very subtly separated into the header. Well, actually I think the header and the footer need to get a little bit darker, so let me just go right back and do that. So this probably needs to go up to about 25, I would think, and Same with this one here. Now let's take a look. Yes, now it is becoming much more obvious that these are separate areas. So now let's just try a few different images, and then all I'm trying to do here is give you ideas for how you could play with your backgrounds, your page backgrounds. So this would be another one, and this would look quite nice with white sort of white boxes with text inside them or something like that. Would work very effectively. Before we continue to look at a few other images, I just want to show you some more things about what you can do with this background image. Now if you click on settings, there's basically one that says no, none, one that says parallax, and one that says freeze. And basically what parallax does, if you click on parallax and then you do a preview, the site will actually scroll over the image. So as I'm going up and down here with my mouse, you can see that the image in the background is fixed, and the content of the site is actually, well, there's no content here yet obviously, but you know, if there were, that would be going over that thing. Now let's go back to here, but when we freeze it, then actually what will happen is this, it will just, actually nothing changed. So I don't know what to tell you people. Now let's go to none and let's see what happens there. And yeah, there it moves together. The image and the content move together if you have none, but then I'm kind of astonished to find out that parallax and freeze seem to be doing almost the same thing. Or rather, it says here that when you have parallax, both the content and the background will scroll, and then if you have freeze, only the content will scroll. But in order to test that, we would actually need to have some content to look at. So how is the image scaled? It can be filled, it can fit, which would make it different. I mean, I'm just going to pull this over so that you can see the difference here. So the fill is actually filling the whole thing. The fit seems to, since the image is not exactly 1920 by 1080, it is just fitting it from the top and the bottom. As far as I can tell, that's what's happening. If you tile it, nothing much will change because this is a huge image and you would not be able to see the tile. So we'll just leave it at fill, or we'll leave it at tile. Doesn't really make a difference. But then we can also position the image in different ways, which again, with this image we wouldn't be able to really tell the difference with that, because it's slipping a little bit. But since the image is so large and it's covering everything, these differences would actually be quite slight, I was saying, but actually when I put it up on the right hand corner, it does seem to make a kind of a difference. So, and then of course what you can do with this image is, if you click here, just like we were looking at with the pictures, with the regular images, you can do a whole bunch of adjustments and enhancements. And let's see what happens if we put it through an auto enhance. Is it going to make a big difference? No, not really. It's, well, it's making it slightly greener for some reason, which I don't understand. But no, I don't want to save my changes. So those are the things that you can do with these things here. Oh, and then one other thing, you can decrease the image opacity, and then if you have a color behind the image, like let's say for example this here, then it would also become a colorized image, if that is something that you want to do. I don't particularly want to do that right now, so I'm just going to go back to my original setting. Now let's just try a few more images, and I'm going to go through a series, and you will notice that I am mostly going to be using mostly abstract or very close to abstract kind of backgrounds, because we should never get carried away with the backgrounds, because what is actually important is what's going to go on top of the background. So I'm just going for very, very subtle things. So for example, this isn't abstract, it's a seascape with lots and lots of clouds, very, very nice, but you could very easily put images and text on top of this and it would not interfere in any kind of way. So now let's look at one more or a couple more. This here, for example, this is actually very tangible, so to speak. But again, this would be suitable because you have a lot of space here to put your content and it would not in any way interfere with that. So, when you are looking for background images for your websites, the kinds of things that you should be ultra aware of is that the kinds of images that you find should not interfere with whatever is going to get put on top of this. So I'm just going to give an example here. I'm just going to go to let's see, just find something, I don't know, like one of these stretching photographs, for example, like this one here maybe, or this one. Let's just put this one here. Now when I put this on this background, it works quite nicely. There's no problem here. However, what would happen if I were to change this background with something that is much more powerful and much more obvious, like for example this one right here? Here we would start getting a problem because all of these dots and these links and things like that are not really working with the colors of this image. They are creating a kind of like a discord. So this is probably not a good image to use for a page background, and in fact, as a matter of fact, I put it here as a sort of a bad example. So let's just look at this one. Would this be any better? Well, yes, actually it would, because although this is also a link and node diagram, very similar to the one that we were just looking at before, the colors here are so subtle that they are not really going to interfere with an image that gets put on top of it. And let's get another more colorful image, like for example this pasta image that we had before, and let's look at that. Is this background going to interfere with this image in terms of color? No, but it is going to interfere with this image in terms of concept, because this is an electronic, technological image that has to do with communication and electronics and things like that, and this is about food. So it would, and yeah, okay, so what about the one from just before, the stretching image that we were just looking at, this one here? In this one, there doesn't seem to be that much of a problem, mainly because the colors are really working well together, and also we could kind of set up a relationship between links and nodes and physical exercise and yoga and connecting the chakras and then connecting nodes and things like that. So you do have to be aware of the kind of imagery that you're using, both for the background and then also the images that you choose for your content, that they actually work together and that they make sense together. So this is something quite important. Let me just look at one more background here, and then we're going to call it quits. So let me go back to this one, which is the one that we started out with. Now, is this here working with this image? Yes, it is. Because this is so abstract, it doesn't really say anything, it's just these big color fields. And then if we were to change this one with a food image, would that work? Let's try it out. Let's go back to that image that we had. And yes, it is, no problem. So, because again, I mean, there's nothing here that would interfere with the content of this particular image with the food thing. So what that gives us to understand is that when we are looking for background images, if we are going to use background images, we don't have to, we can just do it with color fields, but if we are going to use them, then we should be looking for background images that are going to work with all kinds of different content, especially if your website is going to have very different kinds of content like the one that I am doing as the tutorial website for this class that I have been doing since last year and I'm going to do again this year, is also a website that has a lot of different content. So in that case I would have to be very careful with the kinds of backgrounds that I use. And in fact, as a matter of fact, I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So let's look at this one here about the backgrounds that I have here. So on this tutorial website, this is the home page. There's one page which is about food, and it needs to have a very subtle background with very little things going on, because we have a lot going on here and we have all of these very active food images. And then there's one page which is about stretching and yoga, and here we have very little in the background, very subtle, and again that's because we don't want to interfere with whatever is going on here, and also because on all the different pages we have very different kinds of content. So here, for example, we have content that has to do with social media and things like that, so we would not be able to have very powerful background images with a website that has such different content on different pages, where everything has to work together. And I'll show you one other example, which is this one right here. So let me open this one. It's the same exact content. I just have very slightly darker colors on the sides, and then here again I just have a little bit of color here. This is actually not a background, this is a container, and then I have the same slightly darker pinkish gray sides, and then I have the white center on the page. And then on this page again, same thing, very subtle colors, because the content requires that. I can't just decide to make things just because I like an image. I can't just use it. I have to think about what it's going to be together with before I make the decision to actually use that image. Those are the things that you should be thinking about when you are looking for background images, and I'll see you later.